nice to see you all and be back here. Welcome. Gazing on you all so we can connect. All right. It's all about connection. That's what keeps us going in these times. So I've been reading, my talk title is Born to Flourish, and it's taken from a new book. I meant to bring it with me, but it's called Born to Flourish. And it's by Richard Davidson and Court Dahl. And these guys are PhDs, neuroscientists, and they also have spent years with the monks in Tibet and training in meditation. And so they have a beautiful way of bringing science and spirituality together and really giving us the science behind why all the practices that we do help us to feel better and help us to thrive. And so their thesis is, of course, that we can flourish during challenging and turbulent times, that we can flourish. You're not hearing me? Okay. Whoops. Okay, is that better? Okay, or maybe I take it out, which I'm never really good at knowing how to do. Got it. You just pull it. All right. Okay, technical stuff taken care of. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they have a center called Center for Healthy Minds, where they do lots of research in MRI scanners and all sorts of stuff, and they study the brain. And they really show, and any of you who know the Joe Dispenza work, don't know if you know Joe Dispenza, he does a lot of this stuff too, right? So measuring the brain waves after certain practices and noticing the changes that happen, how we can keep that frontal cortex, that this is, the stem of the brain, and that this is very simple. This would be the limbic system, flight, fight, or freeze, flight, or fight. But then the frontal cortex, which is really what keeps us flourishing, which is really what brings us intuitive knowing and connects us with caring and care and spirit. It sort of comes over the limbic system, and to how to keep these networks flourishing. And what we know is our brain has neuroplasticity. We can change our thinking. And when and as we change our thinking, we change the very networks in our brain. It's a science that is now proven. And not only can we change our brain, but that our body also has plasticity. And there's the study of epigenetics that they get into too, that means that we can actually change our genes through the practices that they recommend, through our gatherings like this, through our prayer, through our meditation, through our present moment awareness, through connection, through insight. There's all sorts of ways that we keep those we can shift the very genes in our body. We don't have to buy into, I have these genes for, that's definitely a component, but we can change. We have power to shift and change the way we feel, the health within our body, the genes within our body. And in doing this, we can help shift and change the world, which is what we're all wanting to do right now and needing right now, right? So they make a distinction, and I think this is so important. Flourishing is not happiness. We're not necessarily happy about the state of affairs in the world. We're not necessarily happy with a diagnosis we may have gotten or a friend may have gotten. We're not happy when a loved one dies. We're not happy necessarily if we're dealing with hardship around finances or whatever. And we can flourish. So we allow ourselves to be real, right? I'm not happy, and flourishing is being able to kind of see the forest through the trees, to trust that life is unfolding and working for our highest and greatest good. Flourishing is bringing our best self forward in the midst of it all. Flourishing is being as best we can, buoyant and uplifted through the trials and tribulations or through what's ever going on. Non-resistance to life, really. Being with what is flourishing. And I always say we don't have to like it. And we don't have to understand it. And it doesn't always feel good. But if we just give in to all of that, we can spiral down, right, into a place where our limbic system is running the show. We want to keep up, want to keep the light flowing throughout every cell in our being. We want to keep the light in all our chakras and energy centers going. We want to keep our light shining in a dark world right now. And as spiritual practitioners, which I think we all are, I think that's the question that's relevant right now. How do I deal with the challenges and in our own personal life? Because I don't know all you individually, but from everybody I meet and come in contact with, it's kind of an intense time for us personally and definitely collectively. So how do we handle that? So Emerson says, what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. We're so mighty and so powerful. And the great thing about flourishing is we are wired to flourish. We have innate goodness and beauty and divine power within us. We naturally gravitate towards that because we have that God spark, that Christ consciousness, whatever we want to call it. And when and as we remember that, we flourish. We flourish in the midst of it all. So we've all had those moments, right? Those glimpses of flourishing. You know, I was working with a client I hadn't seen in a couple of weeks and was checking in with how she was doing. And she said it was a hard 2 weeks. It was challenging. There was this, there was that, there was the other. And then she said, and the other night I glanced out the window. She'd moved to a new place where she kind of has a view of the ocean. And it was that full moon night. And she caught like a glimpse of the light of the moon on the ocean. That's a flourishing moment right there. And if we can, as we practice pausing and noticing those glimpses, maybe it's holding our grandchild. Maybe it's a connection with a loved one. Maybe it's right here, right now in this moment, while we're all here together, breathing, hearing the word of spirit, the song of spirit, in the beautiful energy that this unity of Carlsbad is and creates. We can hold on to those moments and we can pause and breathe them in. They make a difference. And no matter what is going on in our life, there's always these glimpses that we can have, right? Maya Angelou says, I love this, life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away. What takes our breath away? In a positive way. There's a lot to take our breath away. I know that could go both ways, right? It does take your breath away sometimes, right? So it's again, right? So we learn, they talk about the two different styles of learning. And the first is, that rote, that learning, the didactic learning. We can read a book about kindness and we can say, yeah, that sounds really wonderful. That's how I want to be. And then the moment someone cuts us off on the freeway, that is out of the window, right? Or the moment someone dares give us some feedback we don't like, right? So really, what they're saying we need now is procedural learning. It's required through practice. It's a practice. We have so many opportunities to practice. And even that is another way to look at it, right? Oh, look at this here that's going on. Look what she did now, What an opportunity to take a breath and to practice. That's our intention, back again and again and again. And through the Centers for Healthy Minds, what they came up with is this doesn't have to be sitting on a meditation cushion for hours on end. They say 5 minutes of concentrated practice a day. And they did studies. I'm not going to get into all the science, but if you like the science that backs up the woo-woo-y stuff we kind of sometimes talk about, it's in that book, right? It changes the brain. They studied people before and then had them do a month of, a daily practice of meditation, and their brains had been rewired. That frontal cortex was more lit up from it. So it doesn't have to take that much. So I think we could say that humanity is at a tipping point right now. And some would say in many ways we're suffering as we look around the world. Certainly for all of us who have hearts of compassion, maybe if we're not directly impacted by things that are going on, we're seeing our fellow brothers and sisters being impacted. So let's keep breathing through this, right? So we're living in a world that has a lot of darkness and uncertainty and unknowing right now. And it feels really important that we, as the spiritual practitioners that we are, keep... What's happened? Pardon? Okay, did I veer away? Okay, sorry. Or did it... Pardon? Okay. Okay. What's happened? So Thich Nhat Hanh says, I think I might have read this, but anyway, this, my dear, is the greatest challenge of living alive, of being alive to witness injustices in this world and not allow it to consume our light. This, my dear, is the greatest challenge of being alive, to witness injustices in the world and not allow it to consume our light. That's it right there. To remember the light in the midst of the darkness. To practice these flourishing. There are 4 skills. I'm going to whip through them and get to them. But most of them we're already doing. But to bring consciousness to them. And I think it means we have to face the difficult realities that are going on. We can't do bypass. And we can't just transcend sometimes all that we're feeling inside. We face courageously the difficulties and the realities of what's going on, and the reality, we have to face the difficult realities and stay open to the whole of reality, the ultimate reality of Spirit's love and light in the midst of it all, right? Which means keeping close into our sense of what is precious, what is sacred, and what is beautiful. To hold on to that. It's back to those glimpses. So here's a little story. Kabir was a shoemaker. He's known for his good nature, his cheerfulness, his generosity, his care for others in his community. And as he worked and moved through the day, he always repeated a mantra, Ram, 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 which is a mantra for remembering the sacred or the divine. Day in and day out for 20 years, and one day Ram appeared. And Kabir was surprised and said, who are you? And Ram says, I'm Ram. Kabir says, why are you here? And Ram says, why am I here? You've been calling me for years, and now I've come. What do you want? Ram says to Kabir. Kabir says, I don't want anything. Ram says, what? Why have you been repeating my name for 20 years? And Kabir says, I just love repeating your name. Then for years to come, wherever Kabir would go, he'd be followed by Ram and the sound, Kabir, Kabir, Kabir. So there is power to a devoted, grateful heart, and it touches even the gods. There's power to a devoted, grateful heart. There's power in that. All right, the 4 skills that they talk about in the book and that they have researched. The first is awareness. And we practiced in the meditation, present moment awareness. Being here now, pausing throughout the day. Am I present? Am I here now? What's going on, right? Training our attention. It's really the foundation for everything, because we can't change what we're not aware of. So it's also being aware of ourselves. Oh, I set an intention to be kind in the morning, and that lasted till around 11 when I got that email, and I noticed I shifted. It's a noticing without judging, but being aware of ourselves, and taking a breath and pausing, no judgment. And we do this through the different types of meditation. We do this through prayer. We do this through different mindful walking, yoga, qigong, tai chi. We all know the ways, but it's a practice. And again, if we just practice 5 minutes a day, it will make a difference. It's about being with our thoughts and our feelings in a healthy way. I always support, every couple of hours, pause. What am I feeling right now? How am I right now? Getting used to that, checking in. That's awareness. Present moment awareness. Being here in the moment. You've probably all heard the story of a guy who's in the jungle and he's being chased by a really fierce Bengal tiger. And he's running away and he's tripping over the undergrowth and all the trees, and he's running through, and there's a dip into the ravine, and he sort of jumps off, and he's holding on to a tree or a bush, and the tiger is sort of at his heel, so to speak, and he's going to jump, and he looks down and sees there's another tiger at the bottom of the ravine. And he's standing there, like holding on between the two. And suddenly he sees a beautiful, luscious looking strawberry bush. And he picks a strawberry and eats it in that moment. And of course, that's just an illustration of, yes, The future may be really scary, maybe, or it may seem really scary. The past or what's happened may be upsetting. There was a tiger. In the present moment, he was able to pause and enjoy a strawberry. Connection is the second skill. And as we, connection is the skill of being present with others, ourselves, and I would say with spirit and all our surroundings, right? The cultivation of appreciation, care, and kindness. Connection, where we are hardwired to connect with each other. There's I love the story of an illustration that illustrates this of Parzival, who is on his search for the Holy Grail. And on his search, he comes upon a city or a town that is really desolate and dying. And it's got this kind of gray color to it, and there's no leaves on the trees, and the flowers are dead, and the people all seem really not alive either. There's just this heavy energy. And he goes to he's told that the king lives in the middle of the town in this big castle. And he goes to the king, and the king is dying. And the king's castle is dead and dark and flat, and the king is in his huge bed lying there, pale and limp and with no energy whatsoever. And the young knight stands there, and he doesn't know what to do. He's been told it's not polite to ask higher ups questions. So he says nothing. And he leaves the king in the bed, and he's on his way out of town. And through the forest, he meets this sorcerer. And the sorcerer says, "Where are you coming from?" And he tells her the whole story. And she says, "What are you doing? Why are you leaving? You need to go back to the king." And she tells him what to say. And we'll get to that. So he comes back. He comes back and he sits by the king's bed, and he takes the king's hand, and he looks at him and he says, "My king or my master, what ails you? What illness do you have?" He's present. He's connecting. What ails you? And in that moment, the king's eyes open up. He starts to get color back in his cheeks, and he sits up in bed. And slowly, slowly, the whole town comes back to life again. And it's again a story of connection. When and as we reach out with empathy and care. But connection is also about our willingness to be vulnerable enough to receive care. That's a big part of connection. So the king received empathy, received compassion. Can we receive? Can we be the ones that are supported and cared for? Because this is the way we connect. Some of us learn that through illnesses in our life, through moments where we really, or moments of hardship, where we really need others. So it's a back and forward, a giving and receiving. And we know how it feels when we make a difference in someone's life, don't we? When we recognize that the words that we said, or the touch that we gave, or our willingness to sit and listen made a difference. Or when we recognize the project that we're working on has really fed and helped people. We light up with that because that's what we're wired for. This bringing more ease into people's minds, or more happiness, just with a smile maybe. And so we practice in connection. There are those it's easy to connect with. There are those it's easy to love and have compassion with. And there are those that it's not so easy to. And the Buddhists call this widening our circles of compassion. How can we keep bringing in to our meditation of loving kindness the people that challenge us, until eventually, through a lot of practice, that circle of compassion encompasses the whole world. Loving compassion and connection. The third is insight. And this might be one of the, I don't know, they all kind of flow into each other. Insight, building self-knowledge through self-inquiry, exploring how our thoughts and feelings shape our experience. It's really know thyself. Know thyself. Insight. And I think what we're being called to right now is to be present. You know, Tara Brach says what the world needs now is people who have the courage to be with their feelings, to face what's going on, to not be afraid of the feelings, and to be willing to have the insight to know what is arising, and to be with it and to move through it so that we can move on and continue to be a light in the world. Let's take a breath on that. Because when we have self-awareness, we can have a fresh perspective so that we can let go of limiting or false beliefs, right? That are no longer serving. And we can stay open to the infinite possibilities that arise. There was that movie, it's an old movie, The Interpreter, and Nicole Kidman was in it. And there's a line in there, vengeance is a lazy form of grief. And really what that is talking about is what that is really talking about is it's much easier to go into blame and anger. It's a false refuge because it keeps us from what's really underneath. And that going into vengeance and revenge and blame and anger keeps us from what's really underneath that, which is usually grief. And I do think we're all grieving right now on some level, grieving a world that we knew, whatever it is. And we don't have to get sucked into that grief. We don't have to, that doesn't have to be the only thing that's going on. You know, it's interesting, at the entrance to all the temples in Tibet are these like animal-headed goddesses that look really demonic. You know, they sort of represent jealousy or anger, aggressiveness, and those kind of darker attributes. And what they represent is you can't get to sacred space without visiting those other parts. We can't get to sacred space within ourselves unless we're willing to be with what's coming up. The courage to feel, the courage to be transparent. And we as a society have been conditioned not to feel. Take a pill, have a drink, buy something, scroll, watch TV. We know, you know, it's not easy. It's not that we deliberately don't feel. We've been conditioned not to. But the practice of insight calls us to that. Let's keep breathing. She says we don't get to sacred space by bypassing, transcending them. Meeting them with presence infuses us with more love. With more love. One more, purpose. So that's 5-4. I'm just finishing up, thank you. Purpose, finding our true north, that sense of purpose in our life. Purpose gives us meaning. We all have to have a reason to get up. And that may not be, it doesn't have to be anything flashy and huge. It can just be, let me be grateful today. Let me smile at everyone today. Let me be a loving presence today. What if our only purpose is to be that? That's enough. But it gives us meaning. I talked a while ago when those monks were walking for peace. Remember the monks who walked for peace? And a lot of the research that Richie and Court in the book did was on monks. They noticed how different the monks were continually, because apparently some of the things they put people through were very uncomfortable in the scanners and with things all attached to their head. And he said a lot of the subjects they were researching got kind of irritated and didn't really like it. He said the monks, they just always, like the monks that walked for peace, just were always peaceful, always in the moment. And their purpose was just, the awakening of all beings and to be awake, loving heart in the world. And so that was their practice. That's what they came back to. The purpose. And usually our purpose is something much larger than our own personal fulfillment, right? Usually is. The Dalai Lama says, every day, think as you wake up. Today I am fortunate to be alive. I have a precious human life and I'm not going to waste it. So let's not waste our lives. I'm not assuming any of us are, right? But each of us is born with these seeds of flourishing. It's innate in us. We practice these skills and other skills, and we strengthen ourselves. The study of the brain, this is what they say in the book, the study of the brain and the fact that we can change for the better is a science of hope. It's a science of hope. There's hope. We can change. We can tap into the brain's natural ability and rewire our capacity to influence our genes and our orientation towards goodness. I'm going to end with a poem by Rosemary Trummer. I do not turn away from the stories that make up, I might not be able to do this, that make me weep. I am willing to be ferocious, to stand up for what I know is true. But I study what is beautiful, what is generous. I offer it my devotion. Even in this moment, writing this poem, I stitch in the pauses and the stumblings. These too are beautiful because they are true. I stitch in the pure potential that steeps in uncertainty. I stitch in silence and I stitch in hope. So let us stitch in hope, stitch in connection, stitch in awareness, stitch in insight, and stitch in purpose, and be the lights we're born to be. And let's keep flourishing no matter what. Thank you so much.